Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. The Seer Stone, Sight Beyond the Veil. Within the mist-heavy traditions of Scottish folklore, the concept of second sight, known as an Anda Hiala, emerges as both a gift and a burden, perfectly aligned with the theme of the seeing and the lesson that vision does not close again. Among these believed to possess this ability, certain objects acted as conduits for perception beyond the visible world. None were more evocative than the seer stone, small, often unremarkable stones, said to reveal what lies hidden when held or gazed through with intention. Passed quietly through generations, these stones were not tools of spectacle, but instruments of awareness, allowing the bearer to glimpse spirits, omens, or events yet to unfold. In the Highlands, seers were both respected and feared, for their visions could not be summoned lightly nor dismissed once received. Sight came unbidden, often in flashes, a funeral procession seen before a death, a figure standing where no one yet stood, or a shimmer of movement where the boundary between worlds grew thin. Accounts of second sight describe it not as a constant clarity, but as an intrusion into ordinary perception. A seer might be walking a familiar path and suddenly perceive another layer overlaid upon it. Shadows moving against the current of reality, figures passing through walls, or gathering of the She, the Fae folk, moving in silence across the land. The seer stone, when used, sharpened this threshold, focusing the vision while also deepening its intensity. It was said that to look through such a stone was to risk seeing too much, as once the mind recognized the pattern of the unseen, it could no longer fully return to ignorance. For this reason, the stones were treated with caution, often wrapped, hidden, or only used at specific times when guidance was sought. The act of seeing was not considered power in itself, but responsibility, the obligation to carry knowledge that others could not perceive. In many stories, individuals who came into possession of a seer stone did so unexpectedly. The stone might be found in a river, uncovered in a field, or passed down without explanation. Its significance only revealed through experience. Once activated through touch, ritual, or moment of heightened awareness, the stone would begin to reveal its purpose. Yet what it offered was not always welcome. Some seers spoke of isolation, of being unable to share what they witnessed without being dismissed or misunderstood. Others described a quiet acceptance, learning to navigate both the seen and unseen with restraint and discernment. The vision did not command action, but it altered perception, shaping how the world was understood and engaged. Symbolically, the seer stone represents the awakening of perception beyond the surface of reality. It reflects the moment when awareness expands and the illusion of singular vision dissolves. To see beyond the veil is to recognize that existence is layered, that what is visible is only one expression of a more complex whole. This awareness cannot be undone. Once a boundary has been crossed, even briefly, the mind retains its imprint. The stone itself becomes less important than the shift it initiates. The realization that the world is not fixed, but fluid, shaped by forces both known and unseen. In this way, second sight becomes a metaphor for transformation, where knowledge alters not only what is seen, but how one moves through the world. Culturally, second sight has held a nuanced place within Scottish tradition. It was neither fully embraced nor entirely rejected, existing at the edge of accepted belief. Seers were often consulted in times of uncertainty, yet their presence carried an undercurrent of unease. Their visions reminded communities of the fragility of certainty, of the possibility that reality extended beyond immediate understanding. The seer stone, as an object, anchored this concept in the tangible world. serving as a bridge between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Through its use, the unseen became momentarily visible, reinforcing the belief that the veil was not a barrier, but a threshold. Ultimately, the story of the seer stone affirms that once vision is opened, it does not close again. The one who sees cannot return to unseeing, just as one who crosses a threshold cannot fully return to the space before it. In alignment with the theme of April 23rd, this narrative reveals that second sight is not merely the ability to perceive hidden truths, but the transformation that follows such perception. The world remains the same, yet it is never experienced the same way again. Through the quiet, enduring presence of the seer stone, we are reminded that awareness reshapes reality, and that once the veil lifts, even for a moment, the act of seeing becomes part of who we are. Story 2, the Noaides vision, seeing through the drum. Within the spiritual traditions of the Sámi people of southern Scandinavia, the ability to perceive beyond the visible world is not treated as anomaly, but as cultivated practice, a disciplined expansion of awareness that aligns precisely with the theme of second sight and the lesson that vision does not close again. At the center of this practice stands the Noaide, a shamanic figure who serves as mediator between the human community and the layered realities of spirits, ancestors, and natural forces. The Noaide does not merely receive visions, they enter them deliberately, guided by ritual, rhythm, and intention. Central to this process is the ceremonial drum, a tool inscribed with symbolic maps of the cosmos, figures representing animals, deities, pathways, and realms. When the drum is struck in steady cadence, its sound becomes more than vibration. It becomes orientation, a means of navigating perception itself. Through this rhythmic focus, the Noaide shifts consciousness, allowing awareness to extend beyond the immediate environment into dimensions that are ordinarily unseen. Accounts of these journeys describe a form of vision that is immersive rather than observational. The Noaide may experience movement across landscapes that are not bound by physical geography, encountering guiding spirits, ancestral presences, or forces tied to the land itself. Animals often appear not as passive symbols but as active participants, offering direction or warning. These encounters are not interpreted as illusion, but as interaction within a broader field of existence, one that coexists with the material world rather than replacing it. The purpose of such vision is not spectacle, but function. The Noaide seeks knowledge, guidance for healing, clarity in times of uncertainty, or restoration of balance within the community. Upon returning, the Noaide carries this insight back, translating what was perceived into action that serves the living. The act of seeing in this context is inseparable from responsibility. Once a Noaide has entered these states and recognized the continuity between worlds, perception cannot revert to its previous limits. The environment itself becomes animated with meaning, every movement and pattern carrying potential significance. A shift in weather, the behavior of animals, or the stillness of a particular place may all be read as expressions of a larger system of communication. This expanded awareness requires discipline, as a Noaide must discern which signals hold relevance and which belong to the constant movement of the world. Vision, then, is not a passive gift, but an active practice, sustained through ritual and refined through experience. Symbolically, the drum serves as both threshold and anchor. Its surface, marked with cosmological symbols, reflects the structure of the universe as understood within Sámi tradition, while its rhythm provides the stability necessary to cross between states of awareness. The act of drumming creates a controlled transition, allowing the Noaide to enter and return without becoming lost within the experience. This balance between movement and grounding mirrors the broader theme of second sight, the ability to perceive beyond the surface while remaining present within the physical world. The vision does not replace reality, it overlays it, adding depth and complexity to what is already there. Culturally, the role the Noaide has been central to Sámi communities, particularly in relation to healing, decision-making, and maintaining harmony within the environment. These practices were historically suppressed during periods of Christianization, and many drums were destroyed or confiscated. Despite this, knowledge persisted through oral tradition and has seen renewed recognition in contemporary Sámi cultural revitalization. The Noaid's vision is not a relic of the past, but part of an ongoing relationship with land, identity, and spiritual practice. It reflects a worldview in which humans are not separate from their environment, but embedded within a network of relationships that extends beyond the visible. Ultimately, the Noaid's vision affirms that once perception expands, it cannot be fully contained again. The individual who has seen through the drum does not return unchanged. Their understanding of the world has been permanently altered. In alignment with the theme of April 23rd, this story reveals that second sight is not defined by isolated moments of clarity, but by the enduring shift that follows them. The veil, once crossed, becomes permeable, and the act of seeing becomes integrated into daily existence. Through the steady rhythm of the drum and the disciplined navigation of vision, the Noaidi embodies the truth that awareness, once awakened, continues to unfold, shaping perception in ways that extend far beyond the moment of seeing. Story 3. The Pythia, Voice of the Unseen. Upon the slopes of Mount Parnassus, within the sacred precinct of Delphi, the act of seeing was not always carried through the eyes, but through the body itself. A phenomenon that aligns precisely with the theme of second sight and the lesson that vision does not close again. At the heart of this sanctuary stood the temple of Apollo, where the Pythia, the priestess of the oracle, served as a living conduit between the mortal and divine realms. Seated upon a tripod above a fissure in the earth, the Pythia entered a state of trance through ritual preparation, breath, and the influence of sacred vapors believed to rise from the depths below. In this altered state, she did not simply interpret visions, she became the vessel through which divine insight was spoken. Those who traveled to Delphi, kings, generals, and common seekers alike, did not come for clarity alone, but for access to a form of knowing that existed beyond ordinary perception. The process of receiving prophecy was structured yet unpredictable. Petitioners would present their questions through intermediaries, often framed in careful language, aware that the response might not align with expectation. When the Pythia spoke, her words were frequently enigmatic, layered with metaphor and ambiguity, requiring interpretation by temple priests who shaped the utterances into coherent oracular statements. This ambiguity was not considered a flaw, but an essential aspect of divine communication. The future, as understood within Greek cosmology, was not fixed but contingent, shaped by choice, fate, and the interplay between human action and divine will. The Pythia's visions revealed possibilities, warnings, and the underlying truths, but never in a form that allowed complete certainty. To receive such vision was to enter into a relationship with the unknown, where understanding unfolded over time rather than arriving fully formed. Accounts of the Pythia emphasize the physical and psychological intensity of her role. Unlike seers who glimpsed the unseen intermittently, she surrendered her perception entirely during the act of prophecy. This surrender carried consequence. The boundary between self and vision became permeable, and the distinction between personal awareness and divine influence blurred. Once initiated into this role, the Pythia could not return to an untouched state of perception. Even outside of trance, her position within the sacred space of Delphi placed her in constant proximity to the unseen, shaping how she experienced the world. The act of seeing in this context was not momentary, but enduring, integrated into identity and function. Symbolically, the Pythia represents a form of second sight that is received rather than sought, a vision that enters rather than being reached for. Her position above the earth's fissure reflects the threshold between worlds, a point of contact where hidden knowledge rises to the surface. The tripod upon which she sits symbolizes stability within the unstable place, anchoring her as she navigates the influx of perception. The ambiguity of her words mirrors the nature of vision itself, partial, layered, and resistant to simplification. To encounter such vision is to accept that understanding may arrive through unfolding rather than immediate clarity, requiring patience and reflection. Culturally, the Oracle of Delphi held immense significance within ancient Greek society, influencing political decisions, colonization efforts, and personal choices. It functioned as a central point of consultation, where the human desire for guidance met the recognition of uncertainty. The Pythia's role embodied the Greek tension between fate and agency, illustrating that while the future could be glimpsed, it could not be controlled. Her presence reinforced the belief that knowledge carried weight, and that to see beyond the present moment was to assume responsibility for how that knowledge was interpreted and acted upon. Ultimately, the story of the Pythia affirms that once vision is received, it cannot be undone. The individual who becomes a vessel for the unseen does not return to a state of unknowing. Perception has been altered at its foundation. In alignment with the theme of April 23rd, the narrative reveals that second sight is not limited to the act of seeing, but extends into the lasting transformation that follows. The voice that carries the unseen reshapes the one who speaks it, ensuring that the boundary between knowledge and experience is permanently changed. Through the enduring presence of the Pythia, we are reminded that vision, once opened, continues to echo, shaping thought, action, and understanding long after the moment of revelation has passed. Story 4. The Spirit Walker, Walking with Two Ways of Seeing. Across many indigenous traditions of North America, the idea of seeing beyond the visible world is not framed as an isolated gift, but as a relational way of being, a cultivated awareness that aligns deeply with the theme of second sight and the lesson that vision does not close again. Often described in broad terms as spirit walkers, individuals with certain communities develop the capacity to perceive and move between layers of reality through ceremony, guidance, and lived responsibility. While the specific names, roles, and practices vary widely among nations, such as Lakota, Dene, Navajo, Anishinaabe, and others, the underlying principle remains consistent. The world is alive, interconnected, and responsive. And to truly see it is to recognize these relationships rather than stand apart from them. This form of sight is not sudden or accidental. It is shaped over time through mentorship, vision quests, dreams, and disciplined attention to the natural and spiritual environment. In many traditions, the emergence of this deeper perception begins with a calling, often revealed through dreams, illness, or moments of disorientation that signal a shift in awareness. A young person might experience recurring visions, encounters with animal spirits, or a sense of being guided by unseen presences. Elders, recognizing these signs, may guide the individual through ceremonies designed to ground and clarify this awareness. Vision quests, periods of solitude, fasting, and prayer in the natural world, serve as one such pathway, creating space for direct encounter with spiritual forces. During these experiences, the seeker may receive symbols, songs, or insights that become lifelong companions, shaping their understanding of both the seen and unseen. Their return from such a quest is not a conclusion, but an initiation into a different mode of perception, one that continues to unfold across a lifetime. This way of seeing does not separate vision from daily life. The spirit walker carries awareness into ordinary actions, reading meaning and pattern of weather, animal behavior, and the subtle shifts within human interaction. A bird's call, the movement of wind through trees, or the stillness before a storm may all carry significance, not as superstition, but as communication within a living system. The challenge lies not in receiving these signals, but in interpreting them with humility and restraint. Vision in this context is relational and ethical. It must be used in service of balance, healing, and community rather than personal gain. Those who walk in this way are often called upon to support others, offering guidance, conducting ceremonies, or helping to restore harmony when imbalance arises. Symbolically, the spirit walker embodies the integration of dual awareness, the ability to exist fully within the physical world while remaining attuned to the spiritual dimensions that surround it. This is not a division, but a layering, where both realities coexist and inform one another. The act of walking between worlds reflects a continuous negotiation of presence, requiring grounding as much as openness. Unlike fleeting visions that come and go, this form of second sight becomes a stable aspect of identity, shaping perception in an ongoing and practical way. The individual does not step in and out of awareness. They live within it, learning to navigate its complexity with care. Culturally, these practices are deeply rooted in specific indigenous knowledge systems and are inseparable from land, language, and community. Each tradition carries its own teachings, protocols, and responsibilities, passed down through generations with a precision and respect. The broad term spirit walker cannot fully capture this diversity, and it is essential to recognize that these ways of seeing are not generalized concepts, but living, distinct traditions. Despite historical disruption and suppression, many communities continue to preserve and revitalize these practices, maintaining their relevance in contemporary life while honoring ancestral knowledge. Ultimately, the path of the spirit walker affirms that once perception expands, it does not return to its former limits. The individual who has learned to see in this way cannot revert to a singular view of reality. Awareness has become layered, responsive, and enduring. In alignment with the theme of April 23rd, this story reveals that second sight is not a momentary opening, but a sustained transformation. Vision does not close again because it becomes part of how the world is understood and engaged. Through this way of walking, the boundary between seen and unseen is not erased, but recognized as permeable, allowing the individual to move with intention and clarity across both. The act of seeing, once awakened, continues to shape every step, reminding us that awareness is not something we possess, it is something we learn to live with.